What up, y'all? It's T-Turn, and today we're gonna be looking at y'all's theories for Pokemon Legends ZA. Let's go. I mean, actually, we should talk about this. It is almost May now, and May is the speculated period that we could get some kind of announcement from Pokemon. The things they could announce, first off, no announcement guaranteed, but we got like a whole year and a half to wait for the next Pokemon game, right? Those Pokemon want a couple extra games for profit. We're gonna have to see. The kind of things they could announce is like a Pokemon Presents. They could announce like a mystery dungeon, and then a more Pee-wee main series game like a Gen 2 remake. Who knows? Actually, let's see if any of y'all mentioned stuff about that. Let's go to y'all's thoughts. Ku's tweet and Legend ZA. Oh, who's that? Hello, T-Tar. The other day, I remember that there was the tweet Ku made about which character is the key to the lore of the next game, and that it'd be a big spoiler. Man, has it been like a month since we talked about this? Yeah, if y'all remember, I said I would ignore Ku because I don't think he actually knew anything about Legends EA, and only when the next games would be announced, if there's something before Legends EA, only then I'd go to his tweets to see what he's talking about. I tried looking for the tweet, but I couldn't find it. Well, I can put it on screen. It's this. At the time, we didn't know what the next game was gonna be, but now that we know, we can start to speculate which of the characters could be the key to the lore. If you don't remember, the characters that were in the image, it was Kieran, Carmine, Crispin, Drayden, Lacey, Amars. Yeah, this is the image on screen here. Here's the thing, my dudes. It's what I just said now. Cool. He's trying to make it sound like he knows what's coming next, and a lot of the times he does. But when he said one of these is the key to the next games, because it seems pretty evident, at least in my opinion, that he didn't know anything about Kalos being revisited, if that tweet and riddle is true and relevant to something, it would be for these hypothetical games that could be announced, that would come before Legends EA. So that would be a Johto or a Unova game. That's the only hope I can give to this actually meaning something. We actually talked about this a bit. It seemed fun to talk about like Carmine, for example, since she travels with Briar, that if there were to be some kind of Gen 2 remake that'd be announced in May, that she could have a role where she's helping you on your adventure and like introducing Terrastal into those games. It's a weird thing to think about, right? You got Mega Evolution, the hype season, and Legends EA. Even if they were to announce this conjectural game with this idea I'm saying, incorporating Terrastal into this, it'd be weird to have both Mega and the hype season and then put her focus back on Terra. So if anything, I guess the cleanest way they could do it is just making it a non-gimmick game. Anyhow, so we got these 6 characters. Those are the ones that were in the picture Ku used. I'm putting my money that it's gonna be either Kieran or Drayden, as I think they are the 2 most popular and cool from the DSC, and would probably have the most potential to fit in the Legends EA. Oh yeah, you're talking about this in the Legends EA scope. The only issue is, why would Ku say there would be a big spoiler for Legends EA? See, bro, this is why it makes no sense. Let's say that it's Kieran. If it was him or an ancestor, then maybe it's a spoiler because we know that he could feel jealous towards the protagonist and try to cause problems. Yeah, bro, it's crazy. I really want to say he's not talking about Legends EA in that at all. It's pretty strong wording to use too. It's a big spoiler for the next game. And also in that tweet, he said it's whoever grasps the key of the lore that is the big spoiler, or the grasping of that key is the big spoiler. It's weird wording. The only one who really grasps the key of the lore, let's look at that image. We have Kieran kind of, because he's the one who uncovers Tropius at the end to some extent. We have Carmine kind of, because she witnesses Tropius, and then we kind of have Drayden, who you could say grasps the key of the lore because he understands the overall picture with Kieran and what needs to happen. So those are only 3 characters that are really relevant. You could make a case for the other characters too, like Amars. She has some fun dialogue that could be relevant, but I want to focus on those 3. Let me find the tweet so I can see it. One of them grasps the key of the lore. Yeah, so it's the grasping of the key. So it's definitely one of these 3. We pretty much talked about this idea already ad nauseum. These 3 just having some kind of relevance in Unova or Johto remix is really the only closest thing you can make sense with this. But even that doesn't fit the strong wording he's used. Like, what you mean it's a big spoiler? A big spoiler? You could say it's the fact that maybe it's a Unova game. But all of these characters are Unova. They go to a Unova school. These dudes are in Unova background. So that wouldn't warrant him saying one of them grasps it. The only thing I can think is Ku's being a dumbass, and it's not actually a big spoiler. There's just like a tiny tidbit that you can see in this image that makes sense once the next games are announced. So let's say May rolls around and this game really does get announced, that you'll see some overlap that makes sense only in hindsight. Drayden is probably the one that fits best. He was already a wise character, so a similar character in ZA could be interesting. Possibly expanding his lineage beyond Unova or something else. Bruh, I suppose. Let's put this in the Legend ZA context. Drayden having an ancestor and using that as the missing link is another way you could explain that, but in a very weak way. Not weak as in your idea here, just weak as in Ku's riddle his ass. I know that these are some half-baked ideas, but you get my point. I mean, y'all let me know in the comments. Would y'all attest this to being something Legend ZA related? You know, this is really gonna be more of a chill video where I want y'all to let me know your thoughts on something being announced in May or not. To get facts straight, nothing right now would be announced. Game Freak, they make so many games in a row that they do eventually have to take a break year. Right now, if they take this break year, then in the background they can get to work on Legend ZA as well as the Gen 10 Pokemon games that would come in 2026 and some stuff for after that. They'd be developing all that in smaller scale starting from now. To me, it seems like it's a whole marathon of games that they're developing in one cycle, and that a break year actually makes sense for them to start a new cycle. They clearly had an incredible run in the last cycle, right? They started a new main series, Legends, which was extremely popular. So popular that it's the first act of the next cycle. And then they made one of their best Pokemon games ever with a proper successful DLC, I'll say, because it continued the original story. They were able to do a two-part situation. So it's like now with all the success they got, they can use that to jumpstart what they do next in Pokemon. So I'm just saying, in that case, it makes sense that they get a good 2-year break while they prepare for a whole new run of games. On the other end, the reason I say it makes sense something could be announced is just because Pokemon makes so much money. And this isn't a whole definitive proof. If you look at Dragon Ball Super, they totally effed that up. It was a money-making machine too. Pokemon's the highest grossing media franchise in the world. And under you got stuff like Mickey Mouse, which still runs to this day, right? They're actively making use of it and making sure they're bringing in profits. Winnie the Pooh, you know, is active. Star Wars is active. Look, MCU's all the way down here. Obviously, you get this far in the race to keep going. So having that fact on the back burner and then thinking about what year we have laid out for us right now in 2024, nothing was announced. When that Pokemon Presents came up, nothing got announced for this year aside from Legend ZA, which is next year. No smaller Pokemon game, no Pokemon Ranger remake, no Mystery Dungeon remake or anything. They made it such a blank year and only put Legend ZA in that announcement like they wanted to just properly tell that to the world and get that on the top of people's minds for a while before they give an actual Pokemon Presents with a couple of games they'd release leading up to Legend ZA. Doesn't even have to be a main series game they announce, right? Like I said, with all this money Pokemon generates, it still makes no sense to me to this day that they haven't made a new Mystery Dungeon game, for example, when the last one they made is their most successful. So it's clearly a train they should be keeping going. So it's just the fact that Pokemon clearly knows what they're doing, that they're number one, and the fact that they suspiciously announced no games. So we have a pretty empty year for Pokemon. It's a fun possibility to imagine May could roll around and they could have a Pokemon Presents that will fill in the gap from now to when Legend ZA comes out. I pretty much mentioned this idea already. I'm just reiterating it because we're so close to May. I want to hear what y'all think. If Pokemon really wanted to do the best of both worlds, so they have nothing planned for this year and the next immediate games really are Legend ZA, then at the least it makes sense to me that they would have at least done something where they made a third Scarlet and Violet DLC that comes out way in the future in November of this year, but that would at least keep people's attention. And it wouldn't have to be a super intricate DLC, doesn't have to involve a new location that you go to, could just be in the original Paldea. Could easily be, I could make it up right now, some DLC where you team up with Professor Rhyhorn and together you work together and uncover some 5th ruinous Pokemon, right? You'd always need some legendary to be the main event of the DLC, right, on the cover. And that itself would be enough to keep Pokemon's name in the hype season. I'm just thinking of this from like a business point of view, right? But instead what they did is they programmed a continuation of the second DLC, which had a whole hour of content, a whole mythical event for Picharon, for free in the Indigo Disc. Even if you were to just take that and ignore this idea I just said, they could have just not put that in the Indigo Disc and made it expanded and a separate DLC that would have come out in like summer of this year, and that would have at least kept Pokemon's name in the hype season. It's almost like a lack of foresight from them that they now have made this empty year for them, unless they did it intentionally and stuffed Picheron way back in January because they have something planned for later this year. And this cluelessness that we have now is the same cluelessness that everyone had after X and Y. Leading up to May, people didn't know what was happening. They were just keeping their eyes peeled for Pokemon Z news. Everyone was saying, we want Hoenn remakes, but we can't imagine it actually happening. Then May 7th rolls around, and out of nowhere, with no build-up beforehand, suddenly Hoenn is confirmed, and that's the new hype train going on. It makes sense to me if by saving Black and White remakes for after this revisit to Kalos, that they can make a more grandiose Black and White remake with incredible graphics. But at least for the Johto remakes, freaking no one cares about Johto. They could just poop out a Johto game for later this year. I'm not even saying that I would be super excited for a Johto remake, like a Let's Go style Johto remake. I'm just curious what's going on in Game Freak's mind. And this is when we get to the final thing to mention, which is ILCA. I already made a chain of videos on ILCA. Their latest game just came out, Sandland. They, of course, and it hasn't been put in the forefront of the news yet, they, of course, started up Pokemon Works. And it's in ILCA's building. So it seems like Pokemon and ILCA are working on something. ILCA already has a good, strong amount of Pokemon experience, as well as experience developing a bunch of Bandai games. So it makes sense that they would have given this task to Pokemon Works, this brand new company they opened up, which would be something like, because Pokemon Works only opened up around March, it'd be something like this game was developed for longer, but they just weren't established as a company yet, which involves some trust. But let's say they're developing Johto, once it looked hopeful, and they're like, yo, this is gonna happen, then they formed Pokemon Works in March, and are now working established leading up to this Johto game coming out later this year. That way, when I picture it in that sense, the whole gap year makes sense. They didn't need to stretch out the Scarlet and Violet epilogue. They put that break from January to May for Pokemon fans to sit tight. And then from May onward, it's this hype season where they bring up Pokemon Works and this new Johto project. That ends in November, and then we get to January of next year, and now the hype season's all about Pokemon Legends ZA. This is when we properly start to get trailers and legit gameplay showing off just what's in the game, what this new Lumiose would look like. That timeline makes a lot more sense to me. So then we come back to today. It's not May yet when I'm recording this, but it might be May 1st when you're watching this. It's now May. Doesn't it sound like this would be the thing that would happen? Shank that like button. Let me know your thoughts. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.